Hello, everybody, and welcome to Neo4j Live. Jump into Graph, creating mock data to get started with graph databases today with Jason Koo. Hi, Jason. How's it going?
Hi, Alex. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm hoping everybody is doing fine as well and has a good day so far. Let me turn this on so maybe the lighting is a little bit better. I quite as professional as your setup, Jason, but still I have a light. I can probably turn it on. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. This is a special episode today with usually I have a community member or somebody else from outside of Neo4j join me to talk about what cool thing they developed recently around Neo4j with graphs. But today, Jason is a colleague out of the Neo4j developer relations team, and who has also built something very cool. So it's worth sharing definitely. So I think it's going to be a fun episode today. As usual, if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, this is live while you watch it right now. Then type away in chat. Use the chat for everything. We are looking forward to your comments out there. And I'd like, before we get into the actual presentation, I'd like to mention the call for papers for nodes is open. Let me put the link into chat. So if you are interested in presenting something about nodes, about Neo4j, about graphs at nodes in October, then please don't be shy and submit your session, submit your ideas. The key concepts will be around data visualization, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and advanced application building or intelligent application development. So if you have something for these topics, then submit something. If you have something for other topics, also submit something. We will find a way and a place for your presentations. I'm sure. There is lightning talks and there is longer sessions. So even if you're something smaller, then that's also a place for that. And if you submit by end of May, so in let's say 1.5 or so weeks, then you are most likely to be featured on the Nodes website, because there will be a first round of approvals already in early June. So if you like to secure this space, I don't know where do I want to go? Secure your fame space, I guess. Then submit earlier, and then you probably have a better chance of being more visible out there. And yeah, it's fun. We did this last year, and we did it a couple of years ago as well. This is the 4th time we're doing it, so it's really fun. Yeah, and that was that on nodes. And now, Jason, let's get into mock data. But before we go into mock data, I guess let's say a few words about who you are, what you do, and maybe also how did the world of graphs come to you, or how did you, maybe other way around, how did you get to the world of graphs?
Yeah, sure thing. So I am one of the developer advocates here at Neo4j, and with a specialty focused on the Python community. And I got introduced to Neo4j many years ago at a kind of a tech meetup, and someone there had told me about the Panama Papers, right, done by the ICIJ, who had used Neo4j to help kind of piece together what was happening with the huge data set that they had. And this just struck me as incredibly fascinating, right? I was like, what is a graph database, and like, how does it work? So I think it was a few years after that I worked on a side project with a few friends. And what we were doing was trying to create a team kind of building system, right? So you had, X number of developers, like 3, 4, 5 developers with a certain skill set, right? Really expert JavaScript, beginner Python, intermediate Git. And we wanted to figure out a way to kind of help that team find someone else that fit that puzzle that they didn't have, we need an expert Python person with a blah blah blah. So it was this multi-point search system. and it used a radar graph, and it was, to do this traditionally, to find this match would be incredibly difficult. But in our experimentation, we spun up a Neo4j instance, and there was a specific graph data science algorithm. I think it was the harmonic centrality that was perfect for this use case. So it ended up the back end for the system actually was super simple to spin up, and we ended up spending way too much time on the front end on how the experience was going to be, how to search. So long story short, that was my introduction to Neo4j, and then
But I mean that's a cool little bit of information there. When you say you spent more time on the front end than on the back end, that means what you expect is, okay, back end is going to be hard. You have to combine all these different systems. You have to get something set up. You have to make it work. A pipeline has to be set up. Whatever else, lots of hard coding, lots of programming, lots of work in the back end, and then the front end is, I'm simplifying a little bit, is shiny application layer on top of everything else, and it's as long as that is somewhat workable, then it's all going to be fine. The impression, I think, for many people is, okay, backend will be the harder part. But for you, using Neo4j and graphs was the other way around. I mean, not necessarily that the front end was then harder, but you had time to develop a more user-friendly, more better polished application on top of your backend, which I guess made the user experience that much better, that much easier, that much more intuitive and better to use in the end. So I guess it's a good benefit that comes with it.
Yes, it was a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So I think Michael keeps asking me to bring that project back up and running, because at least the back end component of it is low effort. We spent too much time on the front end, but anyways, yeah. So that's that was my introduction to Neo4j, and then Neo4j on a kind of a code level.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I think that's a super interesting application. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think I know a couple of our customers who do something like this in production with their teams to do exactly what you just described, right? I have a team of with this talents or these skill levels or these, I don't know, whatever achievements or academic PhDs or whatever else, and then how do I find the right person to fit in that team? Who could work with them, collaborate, but is basically not in this team because this is the different department or something, but they could very well fit for this project, fit in there, and then move around and do something what they like to do, I guess, because then that's why they are good at it. Usually you do something because you like it, and then you get good at it, and then you do it more, and you get better and better and better. And so it's a great application.
Totally. Yeah, I do hear a lot of companies trying, like, one of their first use cases for graph is like, okay, how do we build an internal knowledge graph of finding the right people? Right?
Yeah.
So
because cool. you don't know, but sometimes. But today we don't talk about this. We talk about mock data, creating mock data. How did you come to this? I mean, this was like, it's an interesting problem, right? I mean, I in the short trailer I recorded, I said, okay, we have like a Neo4j sandbox and an AuraDB and the graph gist as well. So like there's a library of dozens almost of predefined data sets that we make available for people to try and to play with Neo4j, to make it somewhat easy for them to get started, to help them along. Okay, you don't have your own data set, don't worry, we have something for you. But they never quite fit, I guess. And then what made you develop the data generator?
Yes. So as part of my job, right, I spend a lot of time at events, usually local tech events, but also at conferences. And when talking to folks about, what challenges that they're encountering, a lot of times, everyone's domain is very specific. And when talking with them and trying to show them, like, how their problem could be addressed in graph, one of the first challenges is thinking like, okay, which of our sandboxes is closest to this person's domain space, so that I can spin it up and then show the person in graph, like, okay, this is how you could tackle it with this data. It isn't quite a fit for what you're working on, but to try and get them as close as possible to seeing the benefits of using graph. So yeah, after doing that quite a few times, especially talking with people locally, like, okay, oh right, your domain space very specific, very complicated, right? Like I'll look at like someone's was it the ERD diagrams or UML diagrams? It's like, okay, how can I quickly take this and put it into a graph database, right? In the past, I would have to do something like, oh, I wouldn't even create mock data. I would just model the data and then talk in kind of abstract terms of like, oh, this is how you could query the data, and this is why you might want to use graphs. And everyone, I believe, got it, right? They academically understood, what the graph represented and what the potential downstream effects was. But most people I talked with didn't end up going on to spin up a graph instance and then load their data in, right? Which makes sense. Like taking your data, even a subset of it, and migrating it to a whole new system, that's kind of a big ask. Just to see if this technology is of value to them. So I started playing around with a couple Python scripts, taking, like there's a great faker library for Python that can generate lots of fake data. And it was great for, generating like a single table or a single sheet of data. But if you wanted to create something where it is connected to something else, right? Like people to addresses or people to jobs, people to a company, whenever you created these tables, they would be independent of each other, right? Because the generator is just randomly generating data. To tie them together, you have to create custom logic that matches whatever your domain space is. And so obviously after doing this once, it's like, okay, this is not going to work at scale, right? Like the minute you change one relationship to another, you got to go into a function level and change how it's going to, generate that data. So I did look around. There are a couple companies that do synthetic data, mostly taking existing data, anonymizing it, and then allowing you to use it. But at the time that I started this project, none of them had the capability of doing interconnected mock data or synthetic data. So they could take a single table of data and anonymize it, but they couldn't generate like deeply nested tables. So I took a look around, couldn't find anyone that did this, what I needed to do. So I started
you just did it yourself.
I just started doing it myself. It got scrappy. And there's this great tool, Arrows, out there, which a lot of us internally will use to quickly graph stuff up. And I guess I can show that in a few minutes here. So you can put down nodes, relationships, and showcase that. And so I was like, okay, this visual tool is great. I don't want to rebuild this to just create mock data. So I am going to build something on top of Arrows. And fortunately, Arrows allows you to export a JSON representation of the data. So I was like, great, can work with JSON. And then on the end side, when I have to import the data, there's another tool that the company has, the data importer, which is a great tool, right? It allows you to take arbitrary CSV files, draw up a diagram in a version of Arrows, and then click import. And great. And even better is you can save and import JSON and CSV data into the data importer to upload into a Neo4j database. So I think you can see where my brain was like, oh, okay, great. We can go from Arrows to data importer just by using, basically JSON and CSV files. The JSON spec for the two are slightly different, enough that, data importer at this point doesn't readily import an Arrows file, but it's close enough. So that's what I started off with this generator, was creating a JSON converter, and then, building CSV data of mock data was fairly easy. The next trick was, how do you take a JSON representation of a graph and tell a bunch of functions like what order and how many of fake nodes and relationships to create. So I can talk about that as I showcase the tool, but that part was what took the longest, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that you took the tools that are already there and to explain a little bit that there is, these were available at the moment, or they are at the moment available, but they are not quite well connected or not linked up together. So you have arrows and you can do stuff with arrows, and then you have the data importer and you can do, like you said, take a CSV file and import it there, but they aren't sitting there and then not quite. And you took basically the idea of saying, okay, let's use these things that are already there, connect them up, and add some additional to it, as far as I understood recently with the OpenAI integration, and improved it, I guess, and made a great experience out of it. So
yeah. Here, so I guess I could just show the tool, which will make it easier for I guess.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Let's maybe do that. Let me move that around here and get this out of the way so we don't see the text here. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we can see the tool here. So this is currently running off of Streamlit Cloud, and so we'll post a link to that.
Yeah, I'll have a link
in the description, and put the code up for people to see as well. Okay, so the very first tab is just a link to a YouTube video that I do to keep up to date with any new updates. But the first real interesting tab is Ideate. So this tab is really meant for folks who have never done data modeling before, which is a common thing when talking to new folks. Like, hey, before you do a graph database, you kind of want to. You don't have to, but it helps to have a model of data in your mind of how everything is connected. So
it is a difficult situation. Oftentimes people you talk to them and they think, oh yeah, I got this, and then they realize they don't have this. They come with a table mind, I would say, to a graph database, then realize, okay, no, you have to think a little bit differently. You have to work a little bit around or actually not around the concept, but work with the concept of graphs, of connected nodes and edges, and with that you have a new way of working with data, and you have additional way of working with data, and it opens up, but you have to let it open up.
Yes. Yeah. Once someone has done a graph data model once, it becomes, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And it's just as a side note, in, working booths and talking to folks, I've noticed that students tend to pick up on the idea of graph data modeling much faster than other folks. It kind of makes sense. Students are, their brains are generally more flexible, but they haven't had that long work history working with constrained tabular data. So it's like, oh yeah, connecting this thing to this other thing, that makes sense. And it's like, yes, it was an interesting observation. Okay, so this Ideate tab, this first one, is again meant for folks who haven't done data modeling before, and this is based off of Varun Shenoy's Graph GPT project. So it uses very similar prompts to what he was using. The only difference is, two things, which will be easier if I just go ahead and kick this off. So the idea is for you to put in any sort of prompt, and what Graph GPT will do is convert that textual data into a graph visualization. So let's see, what's your favorite hobby, Alex?
Board games.
Board games. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so what can we do here? Like board games are created by people and other, let's say, creative people make board games.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's really simple. So, but you get the idea. I can basically put any description or even just like a block of narrative text, and what Graph GPT will do is create a graph of this. Okay, so here looks a little messy because I did, people and board games are connected by actually two different relationships, but the current visualizer doesn't break up. It's really only expecting one relationship. So what I'll do here is change, let's see, authors, which should make it.
Yeah, authors is good. Node. Yeah.
All right, so here we got something that is more broken up. So the addition that I've done here for GraphGPT on top of what Varun has done is made it so that it will take plurals and make them singular, so that if you write some word multiple times in different contexts, it won't break it up and have like a singular version and a plural version, which happened a lot when I was testing this. So it'll just like take people or person and just make it a single node, which is generally what you're going to want later anyways. Yeah. Okay, so once you have this, and the other addition is I have created a kind of a JSON translator. So the graph data, if you click this button, will download a JSON version of this graph that is, of course, compatible with arrows. Okay, so once I have this data, I should probably clear my Finder window here because got my out here. Trash. Okay, so let me clear this and I'll download this again. Okay, so this file, which we'll come back to. So in the arrows, so arrows is capable of importing other JSON files that are arrows compatible. So if I just do import here, and I choose that file that I just downloaded, you can see this comes over. So now in arrows, I can edit this, right? So if for some reason, like, oh, I really want board game to be 2 words or whatever, not a great example, but say I want to add in tags.
You could add a relationship between author and person, for example, because author is also a person.
Yes, is a person. And, we could have something generic if later on we want a database where we can search board games by tags.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And okay, so this looks like enough for like a really basic graph database. So from here, I can just download this JSON file. And then I go to the Generate tab. So this tab, it's pretty straightforward. You're just going to import any arrows compatible JSON file, which is this untitled graph. It will automatically run all the generators based off of the data that was from here. Right? And it will create a zip file that contains a bunch of CSVs and a data importer compatible JSON file. So I could just jump into data importer. I'll come back to all these tabs. I just want to show the overall workflow here. So here in data importer, if you click on the triple buttons here for additional options, there is an option for open model with data. Just click that.
Oh, yeah.
And select the zip file. It will load all those CSVs that were generated. Nice. And the mapping here.
Oh, okay.
So from here, and let me show you real quick here. So I'm going to jump to my kind of play database. So here, right now, the database has nothing in it. Right. And so nothing in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import all this mock data into there. And to do that, I'm just going to click Run Import, which will prompt this dialog box for selecting the database. So here you're just putting in the URI that is given to you when you first spin up a Neo4j database and the password. Default user, I just use that. So once I connect, it'll just automatically start importing. So it'll take, I don't know, a few seconds. Okay, so we can see here, the data importer says, A-OK, I've downloaded or I've imported 4 board games, 3 people, how many authors? It created 90 authors and 54 tags, and then these relationships. Okay, so here, if I jump into here now, I can see hopefully the same schema, right? Board game author, and this was person. And if I just randomly pull some data, we can see some interesting mock data that was generated.
Okay.
So at the, I guess, the most basic level, this is how the data importer works. You don't have to specify, like, so it was just randomly generating random number of authors, board games, person tags, all this stuff, just to make this data work. And we can see there's some data in here that we can immediately start playing with. But obviously, based off of pure randomness, it's a little weird, right? So we have way more authors than people. Generally it's going to be the other way around, right? So if you go back to the design tab, you can specify counts and other pieces of data that you want, right? So so we got a couple options here. So in arrows, you can add property data here on the right, and it can be any string key, any string value. Like arrows doesn't really care, right? This is really for you to notate what you would like, right? So let's say we want 100 people, and say you wanted like a UUID thing. You could have some random string. So you can put any sort of properties you want. Things that would make sense is like we'll just put like we'll just put a name, first name. We'll break it up. And last name. Okay, and so we can go through like all these nodes and relationships and add this. So we can do this with relationships as well too. So generally one author can maybe make, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 different board games. And generally, unless they have split personality, it will be one author will be one person, right? Board game will probably have several tags. 1 to 6. Actually, let's not do 1. That's too little. 6. Tag, I'll give it some name, some random string. Created by, so each board game could be created by multiple people, right? So
could be,
I don't know. Again. Okay, so here, how many authors should we have? Again, you don't have to add counts for everything, but defining this will give you the ability to shape your data a little more accurately to like your domain space.
Exactly. I just want to say, I mean, you know your domain, you know how the rough distribution is across your whatever you look at, and then it makes it more applicable to what you're working with. If for example, you say, right, stupid example here, but you say author makes board game, and the count is a ridiculous number that doesn't make any sense at all. Or you just said author person count is 5, then you have like schizophrenic authors of your board games, which you don't want to have. So it doesn't make so much sense in the end.
Right. Yeah. Like here, right? I've decided that okay, each author will make between 1 and 3 board games. So you're right. The numbers should line up here. Okay, so here I think I've got everything more or less tagged in some way. And so here I could download this iterated version and then just upload that. So this will be _1, import this. So what I'll do is I will blank out my database so that it is, so I can look at this sort of clean mock data.
Yeah.
Right, I've downloaded it. So clear this. This is, okay, all clear. Open model with data again. Upload the newest version, run import. Wait a few moments. Hopefully everything will be green again. Yep. Okay, so this time it created, the 30 board games, the 100 people, 10 authors, 70 tags. I don't think I specified number of tags. Okay, so all this is in here. So if I run this again, it should be the same schema. Yep. And if I run this, the shape of the graph should be different. Yes. Okay. So that looks already way more realistic than what we had before.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so here I'll click on this random board game, which I did not specify a name. Was over here, was created by these 3 people. And it's got these 2 tags associated with it. And here, all I did was, added the count and then specified the value type of what I was looking for. Right here, I'm just looking for some string, et cetera, et cetera. And that already is a step above what we had when we started.
Yeah.
Now,
it's very cool.
Very likely when you have something like a first name, rather than a random lorem ipsum word, it would probably be more ideal to have an actual first name, even if it's fake.
Yeah.
So here on the right, there is a list of fake generators that I've pre-baked into this tool that will generate specific types of fake data. Yeah, again, it's pretty straightforward. It usually matches the name. So first name, it's going to be some sort of string that I want, right? So like, oh, great, I've got a fake name generator. This one, I believe, uses the faker library. Yes. So to make this work, I'm just using this. I've got kind of a JSON object code pattern. It's just stringified JSON. So I'm just going to copy this and replace the string value with this value. And then I can do this with last name.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to see an example of what the data outputs, you can click this button and it'll run this. So I can see here, I've got like Walker, Roy for first names.
Melissa, there it is. Yeah, it's underneath. Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, it's I should probably have that output in a different color. So yeah, this tiny box, which may not even be visible. But anyways, you can go through each one of these generators and decide like, okay, so I've got, what's a good example? Like URL here. So address for USA. Okay, what does that look like? Like, oh, it generates, a dictionary of other data. Or like I want to create a few sentences, right? So let's do it between 1 and 3 sentences. And what does that look like? Oh, looks, it's a lorem ipsum generator printing out Latin that I cannot pronounce. So you can choose a few options to make the fake data more realistic, right?
Yeah.
UUID.
And I saw you can also add your own list at the bottom there. So if you have some kind of some values you would use because they make sense for your data, you have something prepared and you could use that.
Yes. So this is probably the most flexible of the generators available. So here you can put the URL of where a CSV is located. So what I'll do for something quick is I'll spin up a GitHub gist and just have it formatted as a CSV. Then take the raw URL link to it, stick that in here, and then choose which column I want to pull data from, and it will do that. And this is one of the few generators that actually caches data as well. So if you're pulling from, say, a fairly decent sized CSV, it will pull it in once and it will retain it for, I think, about a minute, and it'll just use that to cycle its generation from. So yeah, that's one of the better lists. Oh, so this one also, if you don't want to create a separate CSV file listed somewhere, is you can use lists in a lot of these generators. In fact, we can use this as an example here. Board game. So one of the literal options you could do is literally just put in a list of strings. So what's your favorite board game currently, Alex?
Currently, what is my Paleo?
Paleo?
I guess Paleo, yeah.
I'm drawing a blank.
I don't know. Settlers is another one. That's evergreen, Settlers. I guess. You could put in what else? Robinson Crusoe is another one. Pretty nice one.
I haven't tried that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many names do we need?
Yeah. Okay. I'll just put
chess. Yeah, it's also good. Yeah.
Okay, so we could do this with all the rest of the nodes and relationships. We can add in these generators, right? So like created by could really probably use like when was this created by? And here I could just do, actually I could just do date time, but I can actually specify date time here. So I want all the games that were created, from, I don't know, 1980, January 1st to say, I don't know, today. Oh, I need to update this. So in the future, May 1st. Okay. So if I select, so here I'm giving arguments to this generator, like give me random dates, but only between, 1980 and 2023.
Yeah.
Generate an example. Oh, yeah. Never mind. The example output doesn't work yet, but copy this, put this in here, and it should generate this property data for this relationship.
Nice.
And we can see this work by, first I'm going to clear my database again. I will probably have to come out with some function that clears everything a little faster. Okay, I'm going to generate.
Yeah, although I think this is probably the fastest way. I mean, you could always write a query, obviously, yes, detach, delete. But if you reset your Aura instance to blank, I think this is very
the best way.
The best way, yeah.
Well, I was thinking of like some button here, right?
Oh, inside. Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
Right, because I have to go to the console.
Yeah, I know.
Options here and blank it out here. There is a database command I thought for it as well too, but again, that's something you have to ask someone to do versus a button like reset.
Yeah.
Okay, everything imported fine. Okay, so I rerun this, and I died. Oh, you know what I should have done is looked at the counts. So what was I? Oh, yes, I was looking for board game names. Okay, so we had only 3 board game names. So let's return all the board games. And I'm pretty sure. So we got Paleo.
Yeah.
And you know what I could do is where B name. What was the other one? Chess. There's a chance. Okay, yeah. There's a chance that because it's purely random, there's a chance that one of the options would not be chosen.
Oh, okay. That's bad luck.
Oh, yes, actually, that seems highly unlikely. So it only generated Paleo, so I'll have to dive into code to see what happened there, why that happened, right? Because let's see, name should have chosen between these 3 instead of all 30 was just one. Anyways, I'll check what happened. But anyways, you should be able to just put in like these list of strings or list of numbers, and it will go off of them.
Yeah. And
create. Oh, another thing I could check is the created by. Right. Oop, wrong way.
That's the relationship now we're looking at. Yeah.
So created by here, and it doesn't look like I actually created I don't see the property for it. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I might be running an older build on the Streamlit. There were some updates I did at the end of last week. So I'll make sure that gets updated to the cloud instance. But what should happen is that this date should run its course and then add this when property to created by. Let me see.
Yeah.
I wonder if not all my literals went in. So if you don't care about the range, you can just put in date time as the value and it should work. Although if that other one didn't work.
Well, it's in development, and you update this regularly. So this is that's how it goes. Yeah. So maybe that gives us a good. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I was just saying, after you do this a few times, you realize, like, yes, Jason, you should definitely add a reset button because It's like even after just 3 times, it's like, okay, well, I got to go reset the database and okay.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right.
do you see people? Do you see people iterate a lot with this, or do you think okay, people will once they have sort of, because now we're working with a domain we aren't experts on either, so so it's not our own, but we would be if we imagine we have our a specific expert domain, we would know what we put in there, and then we wouldn't have to do as many iterations. Or do you think this is probably something people would do anyways because they will go from one version to another which comes naturally?
So just in using it myself, I iterate a lot, and
Mm.
I imagine people would do the same, because especially if you're new to graph databases and you're trying to figure out like, okay, how should I relate the different data types, right? Coming
Yeah.
up with nodes, I think is pretty straightforward. This is an easy thing for most folks, but deciding what are the most efficient relationships between them to get the information that somebody wants ultimately. That's where I think a lot of the iteration will happen.
Mm.
And once you have real data or real mock data, you look at it, your knowledge of how it works changes, and you're like, oh wait, I should also include maybe like location data. Let's see, where's my ad? And then if you do location, right, first question is going to be, do I put all addresses as a single location? Is this just a region? Should I put addresses for individuals? So even in just that, you could try different variations where like, okay, is my end query going to be easier if I make a node or if I do it as a property, right? Which is a common question I get. Like, hey, I've got this related data to a node. Should I create a separate node for it, or should I add it as a property to an existing node? Right. I mean, you could do both and then just try both to see which one works. But oftentimes that decision will be driven by the end data that you want, right? So you want to run some query at the end that gives you some data, some metric. Depending on that will really drive whether you put it as a property or a node. But that's not really, I think, apparent at the very beginning. At least it's not to me. Like I oftentimes will need to iterate on a data model a few times before it's like, okay, yes, this thing should definitely be a node. This other thing, though it kind of makes sense as a node, should be a property. So I anyone listening to this video, if you use this, definitely let me know. Like, yeah, I need to iterate a lot, or oh no, man, I just do it once and that's enough. I don't need a reset button.
First time perfect, always.
Yeah, which that's fantastic. Like, guru. So this is the tool in a nutshell. Quite a few generator options. Obviously, I have a snafu with this current version that I'll have to address. But oh yes, so obviously some of remembering all this stuff can be a bit much. So I've got a set of instructions here at the top, which shows what options you have. So
nice.
At the bare minimum, as long as you have a label, the generator will generate something for you. Here are the sort of the extra special optional keys and values that will drive things. So I did show count, and for the value, these are all the literal values that you could use right in arrows. So you don't have to use that generator code for everything. You can put in a string literal, you can put in a number, float, number range, float range, number or floats from a list, strings from a list that will work at some point. And then you can just define data types, right? Give me any string, give me an int, float, Boolean, or datetime. And the generator script, when it sees this, it'll go like, oh, okay, somebody just put a bool here. They want true or false. I will just randomly select true or false, stick that in, move on to the next piece of data. And here I've got, so it used to be, I allowed people to specify a key, which is the unique identifier for a node. And you can still do this because data importer requires some unique key to differentiate nodes from each other so that it knows whether to update a record or to create a new one.
Mhm.
Under the hood, if you don't specify a key, it will just add in a UID key. So it will put in a property, and one that hopefully isn't conflicting with yours, and just assign it a random UUID. That way, all the nodes have separate identifiers that are used behind the scenes anyways. So you're not forced to like hard specify a key at this point. And relationships also, the only real, it actually has two things you can do. You can assign a count, and you can assign an assignment generator. You're like, what is an assignment generator?
What is that? Yeah.
So when you create a relationship between two basically lists of nodes, there are many ways that you could connect them. The two options that I have currently built is, one is pure random. So when it's creating, say like, okay, when I'm looking at this board game, who was it created by? I'm just going to randomly select from this list of people.
Yeah.
Works perfectly fine. Very likely you will have a lot of orphaned or repeat duplicate data because it's purely random. The default option is exhaustive random, what I'm calling exhaustive random. So what that does is when it's looking at the list of targets, it will select one and then pull that node off the list for the next run. So it will attempt to make a connection with all the available nodes before cycling through again.
That's
so
cool.
Those are the two current assignment options. I do plan on adding ones that would allow you to bias certain ways, right? Like bias toward nodes with this kind of data, or just cluster them, right? Like, so if a previously selected node was selected, weight this one a little bit higher, right? That way you create clusters randomly.
Yeah. And that's right there. So it's in the right sidebar under assignment, where you can choose which one you wanna have.
Ooh, okay. So here you can specifically assign. Most of the time, at least when I was experimenting, exhaustive random was kind of what I wanted. So this is the default.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you want a purely random system, then you could do this. Right. So now I know that there's something wrong under the hood with that string selector, right? Because this is name value, not a relationship. But if I, for example, had, and I'm not recommending this is the way to do this sort of thing, but say I had a Paleo node, settlers, and then chess, and then I had, say connecting author like this. I should actually have it the other way. Reverse. So one thing to note, when the generator runs, it does the nodes first and then the relationships. So sometimes you want to do this sort of relationship like, oh, an author makes a board game. Makes total mental sense. But in terms of data generation, sometimes it makes sense to do it the other way. Like, maybe I should have it made by, right? That way, every single board game has an author. Otherwise, you will have every author has created a board game, but you will have orphaned board games where it's like nobody created them because the relationship was
it's true. Yeah.
This way. Right. So unless you've made the counts exactly match, right? So if this was 10, and if the exhaustive random is working, which I know the exhaustive random is working, but this thing's got me null. So if you make the numbers exactly the same, then you should have
then you get them. Then they add up basically, because it goes through all of the full list, and then it goes through the other full list, and then before it starts over, the list is basically done.
Yes. Yeah. So there should be exactly one author to one board game, which works perfectly fine. But this requires some mental, math on your part. and doesn't allow for a lot of randomness. Or it does, but then you got to really think that through. So
Yeah.
when you do this instead, right, made by, and you can go with like, give me, 10 to 100 board games and give me a random set of 10 to 20 authors. Like, I don't know what this is, this, all this randomness will generate a interesting data set.
Yeah.
And when the relationship is set this way, I will not have orphaned board games. So one thing to be aware of. Okay. Oh, let me complete the thought on this. So one idea would be to have different board games be their own nodes, rather than all be board game nodes with a name property. And okay. So yeah, I was just trying to show that this is a different way of doing it if you wanted to change the way it kind of randomizes data. Actually, I don't recommend this approach. So just stick with general node, and you got some list of names that you're pulling off of, or randomly generated names. This is my recommended way of doing things.
Yeah, and the list feature will be fixed soon, so I think that's something to then use once it works and doesn't just pick the first of the list.
Yes, yeah, it was working locally when I tested last time. So
yeah, so it's probably just a little glitch.
It's a work in progress. So
absolutely, and that's a good word. Apropos work in progress, is there a way of people giving feedback, maybe contributing, participating, somehow, if they tried it out now and realize, oh, this is so great, but could you add this feature? Or I tried it out and this just doesn't work at all. Why? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So just if anybody wants, go to the GitHub page that I have set up for here. So it's public. Just go into issues and just spin up an issue like, hey, Jason, this feature is totally broken, or this app is awful. Why did you subjugate us to this? So, whatever notes and suggestions that you have, just create an issue for it, and I will see it here. And if it's a feature that I can add, then I'll put in here. I mean, this is public as well too, so you could fork it and send a pull request, if you want. I do understand for everyone else, for every Pythonista out there, I understand there are code-wise, there's a lot of room for improvement. I am slowly adding in tests and refactoring everything, and kind of my next big move at this point is to extract the generator component from the UI. Mm-hmm. So, everything here is all strung together. What I'd like to do is have a separate project for being able to create an endpoint where you could just send over an arrows compatible JSON file, it generate the zip file and return the zip file to you. And then someday extend that to, you just send it a JSON file and it generates everything and pushes it to your database directly, so that you don't have to do this, download, upload sequence.
Perfect. Okay. So that's even a little more streamlined.
Yes. Yeah.
The direct connection.
Yeah. So it should make this, so you could edit just in arrows. Oh, I guess that's the step after that too, is, so when arrows has the ability to save all this data into a Google Drive. Mm-hmm. And the data that is saved is that JSON file, right? It's this data is what is saved into your G Drive. So if you have a Google file URL, that also would be enough for me to build a system to just take that link, generate the file, and then, granted you've provided Neo4j username, password, and URI to push it directly. So if that system gets into place, then you literally are just editing this, and then you can go to your database and it will be updated here, right? That's where I really want to get to.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah.
So it coming down the pipe may take a while, but if anyone out there is loves to work on side projects, would love to get your thoughts and any PR requests that would definitely move this along faster.
Yeah. Will you, or are you planning? I mean, this is now tied to the data importer. Would there be? Are you thinking of offering other ways of getting the data in over to Neo4j, like let's say a dump file that you can import in your local Neo4j instance or something like that?
Oh, I have not thought about that. That's a good idea. Another thing too would be to have something similar to arrows here, where you can it'll have like a cipher option, right? So you could just
Yeah.
copy and paste that into a browser. Dump file is a great idea. Yeah, right now what I'm planning to do is talk with John, who built Data Importer, and to get the zip file to import function
Yeah.
pulled out so that I can put it up somewhere as a cloud function, so that once you click generate, if you have all the URI here, it will just automatically push it into
Nice. Yeah.
the database.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another one of my current immediate to-dos, is to find a way to do this part without needing to use the UI.
Yeah.
But I do like, so the one thing I do like, well, I mean, actually, I love the data importer, like all around.
It's great. It's
is-
really a good tool. Yeah.
Yes. And the one real benefit add for at least this workflow is that report that happens after you run that import, right? I'll just do it again here. So it's great to know if a snag is hits anywhere in the import process, it shows up in that dialog box. And that, like, I don't know how I would like replicate that, or if maybe that's something I'll find out when I talk with John. But like this is great. When it hits an error, it gives you good information to figure out like what had happened.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, okay. So they do have the cipher stuff. So wheels are turning in my head. I'm like, can I make use of this in some form or fashion?
Yeah.
But yes, this screen in general is of great value.
It is, and like what you just expanded is also super interesting for people. So if you the idea a little bit is also to show the cipher, and to give people a way of learning how to write the code themselves, if the queries themselves, if they want at some point. So obviously if you have a CSV file, it's super easy to use it with the data importer. But if you don't have a CSV file, which oftentimes you don't have, then at least by reading the cipher and by learning that how to write that query, particularly for the CSV files though, but still you learn how to generally work with the data, how to set it up, and that helps you also in future if you will then add more data, use other file systems, other sources. You have a better understanding of how to write these initial queries.
Yeah, totally. I think Eshvar, hi. I think he has a question for us.
Hi Eshvar, nice to see you again. Ask one thing. Without importing a CSV file, we want to create nodes and relationships and expand all the graphs and complete. So after this, if we want to save the database and convert into a CSV file, is it possible to do so? So without importing a CSV file, you want to create nodes and relationships and expand or visualize the full graph, and then down. Yeah, of course. So if you have a, I guess if you have a graph, it doesn't matter where the data comes from, right? I mean, you can import your data by using CSV import, the CSV file import. You can use the data importer, but you can have different sources. You can generate your own graph. And then in browser, you can actually export the file. I don't know, Jason, if you want to click on it quickly on the browser view, you can always export any view you have. This, for example, here, and you can export that. You see here as a PNG file, and I think that's difference between Aura DB and the browser on desktop or in other instances. But you can export that as here you see. Thank you for zooming in here. Export CSV, and you can export that as a CSV file. No matter where your graph comes from, right? I mean, it can be any way. It can be iterate it around. You start with a CSV file, you develop it further, add more data to it, and then you have a bigger graph. And then if you want to export it, this is where you go.
Well, one thing to note about this is, so the graph view is usually kind of where the default where people can look. So when you click on this download button, it's for images. So if you want the CSV, switch to the table view on the left.
Point. Yeah.
And then you'll have the CSV JSON options. And this will return, I believe, the data that matches your query results, right?
Yeah, exactly. It only matches what you currently have on the graph view, so you don't get the full export. If I think, yeah, there is export to see. There's probably an export function somewhere with either with APOC or something else. I'm not sure now, but there must be a way. And Vincent says, for big mockups, you could generate CSV files for the Neo4j admin import.
Yes, that's a great idea. I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure the file format that I have now is not directly importable, but it should be not difficult to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, if you have a huge you want to really try to get something, and that's maybe a good way of when you want to test Neo4j, when you want to more than play with it, but actually see if it's worth what we talk about, and it makes sense for you, and then you have a bigger data set, a bigger data model you need to work with, but you don't quite have access to it yourself, but you can generate a synthetic copy of it. Then I think it's probably a good idea to get something that is as big as possible, so you see, okay, how's the performance actually holding up?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, Vincent, great suggestion. I'll definitely look into that. And something I did learn recently is at least one of those synthetic data companies that I looked at in the past now has at least they've marketed the ability to create interrelated anonymized data sets. So that might be one option, Vincent, is to take either all your existing data or a subset of it, run it through one of these anonymizing data set services, and then import that. But you're right. This, it's not going to be too much effort on my part to make it Neo4j admin compatible, and it would make a great additional thing to showcase, right? Because I personally don't talk about the admin tool all that much, but it is very, very useful for exactly that use case.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I don't see any other questions. It's great, a great addition, I think, to what we have around with Neo4j to make the path to graph as easy as possible. Either you use one of the sets we kind of curate for you on Sandbox, or with RDB you get also a couple, and with the graph gists, or you now with Jason's tool, I think is even more customizable, more personal. You build something that is close to what you currently work with, or what you want to work with, or what your graph could help with in a specific domain, and then you generate something that is a mock-up of that, and then you can play with it in Neo4j and see, does it work? Can you achieve what you want to achieve with it? Is it what you expected it to be? And give it a try. So it's a super cool tool.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for developing. Obviously, thank you for watching, everybody. If you, like we said, if you have any questions, any feedback, any feature requests or something like that for Jason, please use the GitHub repo. I put the link in the chat as well as in the video description on YouTube. So if you want to look at that afterwards, it's in there. And we'll take a short break, or I take a short break because I go on holiday. But there is a couple of other live streams coming up. So the next one is taking place on Friday morning with our colleague, actually, Max Anderson talking to Michaela Ledwich about her journey into graph and what graphs help her, how graphs help her in her way. So that's coming up on Friday. And our colleague Sid runs a couple of training sessions, which are for the Asia Pacific time zone friendly available. So if you are based somewhere in Asia, then check out those training series. They're coming up on when do they start? Actually, 25th, 2 days. The first one with the intro session. So yeah, all of these and more, you can find everything on neo4j.com/events. And yeah, with that, I wish you a great day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for participating. And again, Jason, have a good day and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome, Vincent. All right.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.